guys, I'm Katie from Periapsis Press, and today we are going to talk indie alternatives, and particularly in the context of Halloween and the overall philosophy of Periapsis Press as it interacts with horror and Halloween in general. I'm doing this now instead of next week, the day before Halloween, largely because I want you guys to have time to buy these books. Hi to people in the chat. To Michael Kane, J.E. Tabor, and Patrick. You notice I never say your last name. Was it just Studebaker? Why didn't I just say it? Oh, and William Jeffrey Rankin. Isaac Anderson, hi. Sorry, guys, I'm clicking here. I got a ring light. I don't know if you can see every pore on my face now, but I decided it was probably about time. Let me know if you guys think it's too bright or not bright enough. I'm still trying to decide. Maybe is that better? Patrick, your last name intimidated me just with its length, I guess, and I never really looked at it to see how it would have been pronounced. Okay. Sorry, I'm craning around my mic to see. Let me know if... Okay. Gonna add that. This is a regular episode of The Signal, so we'll start off with indie news. If you guys aren't following TJ Marquis and his the indie news stuff he does, oh gosh, now I didn't write it down and it just went straight out of my head. The indie. This is gonna bug me. Why do I do this to myself? The indie scan, that's what it is. Great source of information, and I heavily rely on him to help me know what's going on in the world in general of indies, and particularly the Iron Age stuff. I have been up to my ears in things to do for Periapsis Press lately, and so I have not done my due diligence in finding news things to report to you guys. But we will be doing the Iron Age book discussion live stream this Thursday, which is October 26th at 7:30 Central, and it will be here on my channel. Of course, we'll be co-streaming to other people's channels as well. So wherever you guys want to gather, but I will be hosting. I'll be playing host this time. Oh, hi to Anne. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I never know when I add something new to my setup. Okay, I'll jump right in. Indie Halloween reads. Oh, I usually also do a upcoming review. That's the one thing I decided to leave off because I was already running late trying to wrap things up to get ready for this. I will be reviewing the third book in TJ Marquis' Heroes Metal series that he accidentally published a little sooner than he intended, to our great benefit. So I'm excited about that. I talked also a little bit about Scars by Finney on my not a stream, a video. Now I'm not remembering. It was with Matthew Waterhouse, his channel, which is the It's the You Meet in a Tavern series. So if you haven't seen that, I would encourage you to look at it. Just like with Anne's interview with me, I put it in my playlist that's called like related videos that I do on other people's channels so that people can find stuff related to me easily. And I encourage you to check out other people that he's interviewed and his channel in general. Great guy. Yeah, he meant to hit pre-order and hit publish. Luckily, it was ready. Okay, so all of the books I'm about to recommend are things that I have reviewed on my channel, on my website. So you guys know that I 100% recommend them. These ones I've picked, basically, some of them are horror related, some of them are monster related. I always have the Harry Potter itch in the fall. I know a lot of people have it around Christmas, which is weird to me, but so I have a couple of those kind of on here too. First one, Mummy of Monte Cristo by J. Trevor Robinson. This one it's a undead adaptation, so kind of like Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, but it also has a very classic horror feel, a lot of like tropes and mechanisms kind of out of the classic horror genre, which I like a lot. So definitely recommend this one. A hair-raising adaptation of Alexandra Dumas. I've never actually said that out loud. A classic revenge story in the style of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, packed with loads of undead and horror delicacies to relish. Seriously, like every beat of the story, you're like, oh, how did he just slip that in? It just feels very natural. Very, very natural. Bloodbane by TJ Marquis. It's actually one of the ones behind me here. Yeah. This one I recommend for the monster element. It's also a novella, which makes it easy to get into and read in a week before Halloween. A fast-paced paranormal pulp novel with horror action and mild lit RPG elements. And they are mild. They're very unintrusive if that's not your usual genre. I talk about this one a lot. I was very pleased with it thematically. Werecats Emergent. Bearcats, but it actually starts on Halloween. So I felt like it was appropriate to suggest this one by Mark J. Engels. A unique take on the concept of were creatures that delivers fast-paced excitement and a clever urban fantasy world. It's a lot of fun. William Jeffrey Rankin's The Black Beast of Ipswich. Obviously, it's like the horror, supernatural horror, and monster elements. I felt that this one was appropriate. Compelling occult detective story featuring two great detectives, Cursed Remains and The Thrilling Adventure. Really, really enjoyed that. Also by William Jeffrey Rankin, Invocations of the Submortal. This one is a horror novella, weird fiction, adventure, and suspense. Definitely a Halloween read. I recommended this one for the book club. We passed over it, unfortunately. I thought it would be a good one to talk about right before Halloween. So yeah, so obviously it's in this list. Hellspawn by Declan Finn. I did not complete this series, but this is like exorcism horror and urban fantasy. It's got a lot of Catholic saint imagery and tropes and stuff like that. But it's intense. It's definitely intense. Very rooted in the real world and like actual events that hit very close to home. So this one can be a trip for sure. William Jeffrey Rankin says he enjoyed Hellspawn Book 2 on his TBR. I think that one would be definitely an appropriate read for Halloween. Hellgate by Morgan Newquist. This one I pulled for the monster, paranormal suburban fantasy. I put suburban because it's not urban fantasy, but it has a lot of the urban fantasy tropes, except that it takes place in suburbia. um, very classic horror feel with the monster. Kind of a demon wolf. And yeah, very intense as well. It was good. It was good. Put the Crimson Spark by William Hastings on here. It's more of a dark fantasy, but I think that it has a lot of like the sort of in like feelings that that people kind of want out of horror, not horror, out of like a Halloween read, I mean. And it has kids in it, you know, young, so it feels, I don't know, it felt appropriate for the list. So here's my first pull for Magic School. that Harry Potter itch for me. Unexpected Enlightenment of Rachel Griffin. I have 3 reviewed on my site. I did guest reviews for the second 2, but I read all 3 of those. And as you progress through the series, it just gets richer thematically. Really, really enjoyed everything that I've read so far of this series and looking forward to reading more of it. But it has some of those sort of Halloweenish feeling tropes that go with the magic school genre, witches, magic, ghosts, that kind of stuff. And for similar reasons, Drosselmeyer, Curse of the Rat King is on here. Magic School. But this one has like gory revenge at the end. So if that is something that you enjoy about horror stories, this one has it. In Darkness Cast, it's got spiders. He tweeted about it under one of my tweets about this, so I included it. Yeah, demon spiders. Governess of Greenmere, I included this one because it is so gothic feeling. So that's why this one's on here. We're getting more into like vibes, I guess. That's it. Okay. Today I want to talk about 3 articles that I came across that kind of talk about horror and symbolism and truth, and using those, I'm going to talk about sort of the 3 things that I appreciate about horror and how I sort of see it as fitting into the sort of greater Periapsis Press philosophy about fiction, particularly sci-fi fantasy, in that I think that they present us with stories in general, present us with greater truths that we then are able to incorporate into our lives in a healthy and edifying way that is not merely good, but essential. Will I have that list posted somewhere? I should. I will work on that tomorrow. I'll make a little article. I'm going to my mom's, so I will have a little bit more time in the afternoon than maybe I would normally. Ideally, right? Barring any unexpected kids things. I have been meaning to do that anyway. I will do that. And I will post it on Facebook. Not Facebook. I could post on Facebook, but nobody would see it. Twitter, and under this video as well. Thank you for asking. That's a good kick in the pants for me. Okay. First, I have an interesting article that was put up by IGN. Why is it easier to believe in horror than it is God? And then this is one of the quotes in the article. Why is it easier for us to believe in an ancient, deathless, winged vampire lurking beneath the earth than it is to believe that there might actually be a God? Midnight Mass knows the answer and is not shy about saying it. God has heard us, vampires have not. So the entire article is discussing the TV miniseries Midnight Mass, which I have not seen. But he has some interesting things to say. I don't agree with him, largely because it's clear that it needs to work out through some issues that have to do with the sovereignty of God and evil in the world. You know what? Be right back. Okay. Patrick, don't kill me, but it's still in the wrapper. I heard about this book from Patrick, who's in the chat. Hopefully he's still in the chat. On his YouTube channel, Cave to the Cross, he and his co-host go through this book really in depth. And so I bought it. I have not opened it yet, but I trust his opinion. And everything that I heard about it made me think that I wanted it, right? So this, I feel like everybody who has questions and concerns about evil and about God's sovereignty over evil, that's a good resource. That's all I wanted to say about that. So I'll take you over to look at the article in just a second. Here we go. I can do it right now. Here. Despite its quiet, almost muted tone and steady pace, Midnight Mass is very angry, as so many of us are, burdened with this knowledge. If God exists, then God at least condones and allows extraordinary measures, of human suffering. It is an important question, and one that I think it is important to be asking. But my first point is that horror prompts these kinds of questions. This guy who, oh gosh, what am I doing? Jared Petty is struggling through his own faith. He talks about how he grew up in a church. He actually was a pastor. He doesn't, he says he's a Quaker, an Orthodox Christian, which who am I to question that? But he sounds like he's working through stuff himself in this article. But the thing that I want to point out as the element of horror that I believe is important, that he is understanding here, is that horror prompts us to ask these deeper questions. Because he's talking about how faith is often mundane and people don't think about stuff. We exercise our faith without always seeking to understand it. Until our child asks us a question about God and why, and suddenly we're challenged to decide what we believe again. Until a natural disaster descends from the sky. Until another person takes something precious from us. Until calamity or evil, then we're terrified. And I would say that a wonderful thing that horror does is presents us with that sort of situation without the actual situation, right? We are prompted to fear and to reconsider our foundational beliefs, not so that they can be broken down or so that they can be like deconstructed, but so that we can arrive at a deeper understanding and therefore a deeper faith. Patrick, talking about the book, What About Evil, says, my favorite eucatastrophe is mentioned a number of times in there. And God as a storyteller with the hero's journey is referenced. And that is actually why I clicked on his video in the first place. Because I was not generally going to be thinking about theology on quite such a grand scale until I heard Hero's Journey. And that is how I stumbled onto Patrick's stuff. It's called What About Evil? A Defense of God's Sovereign Glory by Scott Christensen. And I actually linked it in the description because I knew I was going to want to reference it, just because of how much all of these articles sort of struggle with the idea of evil and how because horror confronts us with evil, right? Okay. Second article is one from Lorehaven. So we're going from this Quaker gentleman who is coming from a place of anger and frustration towards God, still a place of faith. He mentions car accident, and then he mentions reasons people believe, stories, family, and the experience. The reason, let's see, what is he saying here? My belief in God frustrates me, infuriates me, but maybe just maybe is real. In a God that frustrates me, infuriates me, but maybe just maybe is real and loves me and wants me to love other people so much. That's a doubt and a faith I can live with. So he's working through some stuff, and but I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry, guys. Lorehaven is coming from a more confident position, but a Catholic one. So this particular article is talking about the use of the crucifix and the Eucharist in horror, and how the sort of importance of symbolism. Crucifix shows Christ's salvation in dark, fantastical stories. So this is Daniel White IV. The cross's symbol is incorruptible. It can be used, transposed, and inverted, but never corroded. Like Jesus himself, the cross is chimerical. It transgresses our norms and is transgressed against. Its nature does not change when thrown into the whirlwind of horror, urban fantasy, or magic stories. I have no idea how he's using chimerical there. Um, my thinking here is that he's on the right track. Symbolism and archetypes are something that I talk about a lot as being important to the communication of the greater truths of stories. Everybody's taking the mickey out of him because he's using this grand word that I don't even know how to pronounce. Thank you, Patrick. I knew Patrick would know. And I don't know. I don't understand your explanation. Is it Saya, or Kai? I'm going to say Siamerical because I don't know what that other word that you referenced is. My own ignorance coming out here with theological terms and conditions. Let me show you guys his article. But that's not what I didn't leave it where I was in my thinking. Oh yeah, here it is. As one writer says, let's see who that one writer is. Shape-Shifting Jesus by Rebecca. We are perpetually scandalized by any proximity of the holy with the profane, unable or unwilling to see that Christianity is all about this kind of proximity, about the monstrosity of a redemption that plays out not in the terrain of the elevated, but the lowly, the bodily, the sexual, the grotesque. And I would add the dark, fantastical, and metaphysically suspect. So my own sort of philosophy of horror, I know, right? I was like, wow, what? Because I didn't vet that at time. Patrick says, sounds like he's saying the cross crucifix can be different use while being rooted in only one thing. Yes. Okay. Yes. Got it. Okay. I obviously am not Catholic, and I'm Orthodox Presbyterian, so quite not Catholic. And so my understanding of symbolism is quite different. For example, I recommend see now. Oops. Guys, my brain, I don't know what's wrong with me. Hellspawn. It's because I've reviewed 2 different books that start with the word hell and have a different follow-up word. Hellspawn, I have reviewed and recommend. Declan Finn is Catholic, and his main character is a living Catholic saint. And so there is a lot of the symbolism and imagery and trope usage of those, as is common in exorcism horror. And those are symbols that mean something very different to him than they do to me. I would say that the use of symbols is in stories is drawing from our real life understanding of symbolism and those symbols within our own lives. So they're much more personalized, maybe, and cultural context, grounded in cultural context. So I have a different understanding from Lorehaven about the crucifix in particular. I'm not, uh, I don't have that same sort of tension that um, the writer describes in viewing a the use of a crucifix by an unbeliever to ward off of a vampire, or the failed use of, right, or the use of the Eucharist to lock vampires in a tomb. I don't have that same cultural context for those things, but I have a similar understanding of the archetypes that are at play: monster, victim, hero, savior, judge. So these sorts of roles that have deeper meanings that can then speak to our own lives and to greater truths, that those are sort of, to me, uh, a little bit more like beyond corruptibility, if that makes sense. He talks a little bit about viewing a crucifix as indicative of a group versus like a system of beliefs versus like a general like cultural association. And I would say that archetypes are much more foundational and harder to uh, like manipulate in that same way. Um, it's an interesting article, I think, that I'm not um, saying that he's wrong, right? Because I think his conclusion is very similar to mine. He's saying if we look past the grim darkness, and he says a different incantation. I'm not going to follow that. One that tells us of a power greater than the inferior incantations in our media, which, whether or not you think that the symbols have power or the archetypes have power, sort of agree that the stories are able to communicate those in a way that is pointing to a greater truth. What we would say in particular to the God of the universe. Yes, I have a review of Michael Caine's book. What are you guys even talking about? Are you listening to me at all? I'm just kidding. Oh, I see where you came from. Nice. Okay. Last article I'm going to talk about, and sorry that I'm hopping around so much, but I didn't really want to get into the weeds of what these guys think versus what I think. I just wanted to talk about the different aspects of horror that I appreciate, and using other people's ideas to sort of contrast and build on mine. Anne says we're listening, promise. I don't mind. I'm having fun with you guys anyway. Okay, let me add to that. And this one, and all the links to these are in the description, guys. Oh, let's do. Noble Dark Horror explores the problem of evil. Again, the problem of evil. Like, the problem of evil is a problem for these people. And that horror prompts us to ask those questions is so important, I think, because what if you had to go through something horrific in order to be prompted to ask those questions, right? Um, this one is a little summation of a podcast. I didn't listen to the podcast, but I looked at this summary that I linked. God's word helps us confront wickedness in ourselves and the world, while great stories also help train our hearts for these spiritual battles. I agree. This is point 3. All the others have to do with evil, which, to put very, very shortly, right? And sort of what the book gets at is I would come from a place that says God is sovereign over everything, which means he is sovereign over evil. He designed and intended every event, everything in our lives to his glory. And sometimes those things are not very pleasant for us. But they are all for the believer's good, if that makes sense. It's a philosophical problem that people have debated for a very, very long time, which is why I keep pointing to the book, because I really have a I have a mind for like stories and stuff and theological like nitty-gritty. I'm not able to argue with people. I just know, I know the conclusions that I came to, and I can point to people who can talk better than me. Patrick being one of them, for sure. Patrick says, even works in excuse me, works even in Batman. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up, which Christensen talks about as a partial answer, just not the best answer. Sure. So that's where I'm coming from as far as the problem of evil, since I have sort of mentioned it several times and just not kind of expanded on that. Part of the interesting thing about Christensen's book is that he talks about God as an author and how we can use that imagery as a way to understand how God can use evil to his purposes, and without being himself evil, which seems to be a great conflict in particularly in the gentleman, was it Petty, who wrote for IGN. But Lorehaven, this interview was with Mark Schooley. Just make sure I'm actually sharing what I'm looking at here. He talks, they talk about noble dark horror, which genuine heroes, world full of terrors, gritty, epic struggle for good and evil, heroes really struggling. This bullet point emphasizes that there don't mean slashers, violence, porn, nihilism. I would argue that most horror is going to do these things anyway. Slasher, you get like all of these stories have archetypes, right? The evil is embodied and must be fought against. Even if everybody dies, there is still the archetype, right? Which we know in the context of other stories, there are archetypes that stand against heroes, savior, judge. the even if the whole arc, right, isn't told, it suggests it. So that's where I'm coming from. Nihilism is a depressing conclusion, a depressing conclusion in viewing evil. So that is a little bit different than like a type of like a subgenre of horror. And I think generally I would argue that thematically it doesn't work. It shoots itself in the foot. It says nothing matters while telling a story that it clearly thinks matters. That's me anyway. This bullet points talk about stories helping us see beyond the present to an eternal future, completing the story and hoping in promises. Specifically references Romans 8:28-29, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many. ESV, nice. I appreciate these points, and I would concur. My final point would be that horror prompts questions, provides symbolism and archetypes to point us towards truth and practice. So, like he was saying, training our hearts for spiritual battles. That's that sort of practice bed. We engage with a horrific story, and it prompts us to ask questions, prompts us to seek the answer to those questions first within the story itself, and then hopefully, right, if that story has shaken us so much and prompted a question that is really tearing at our heart, to pursue truth, the pursuing outside of that story, within the context of the real world, the answer to that question. Ultimately, we hopefully bringing them to the Bible and to God as the ultimate answer to those questions. So, prompting questions, providing symbolism and archetypes as initial pointers to that greater truth, and then also that act of having those questions asked in a safe environment, right? You haven't actually been hit by a car. You haven't actually been chased by a slasher or torn apart by a beast. That horrible thing doesn't have to happen to you or to someone you love for you to I'm just spitting. I'm animated, guys. For you to be prompted to seek the truth. Even if something horrible does happen to you, because eventually bad things happen, right? It's not a matter of like if, but like when. And maybe it's not going to be a vampire or a werewolf or a serial killer, but maybe it is a car crash, right? You have already gone through that practice of saying, when something horrible happens, as did in this book, and it prompts that question, where do I go for answers? And to have that rhythm, right, of seeking deeper understanding and a deeper faith and a deeper trust in God, I think that ultimately that's the purpose of a horror story, and that goes along with my philosophy of fiction in general, right? That those archetypes and symbolism and greater truths that are contained in stories should then lead us, revive us, help us to apply those things in a practical and edifying way in our real lives. Okay, I'm gonna catch up on on comments. Yes, the Free Narnian. Hi. First slasher Halloween is explicitly about the existence of and the fight against pure evil. Yes. And I don't know entirely what the context of was with I'm Sold, but the last horror book I read was our man Solomon Kane. Love that guy to bits. Would put hearts around his name in the teenage girl's notebook of my heart. Michael Caine says, one of the greatest consolations from evil is that there is no escaping God's justice. We want to see it now, we hope for it, but in the end, God's justice always wins eternally. Yes. And in a story, it is most satisfying. Obviously, there are a lot of deconstructions, right? But a reader wants to see justice done. There has to be either repentance or justice. And that is that archetype, that there is an inescapable judge. Rankin says, Arthur Machen's The Great God Pan and the Inmost Light had precisely that effect on me. I am not exactly sure about the context of this, but great. Michael Caine says, spent 50 days in the hospital the summer after my wife and I got married. When you're staring down emergency surgery, you will ask those questions. Trust me, for sure. Patrick says, anything after Halloween 3 is proof of the existence of evil. Oh, Noble Dark Fiction is what Anne was talking about. Yes, Noble Dark Fiction is a lot of fun. That's why I grabbed The Crimson Spark. Noble Dark feel, definitely. "95% of stories need to be closed loops." Yeah. Hollywood sequels in general are proof of evil. All right, you guys, that's all I had for today. I know it's a bit shorter. I usually go pretty late. I had fun looking through my reviews and finding the ones that I thought were good Halloween reads. It's hard when you review sci-fi and fantasy because everything feels right, you know? But I think that I chose the ones that are most appropriate. And if you guys have suggestions of good indie examples of books to read during the spooky season, right? Leave a comment. Let me know. I appreciate people's recommendations. You guys are still talking. Yeah, okay. Oh, yes. The Garden Maze does have some spooky things. Yes. Dark fantasy. I don't know. It didn't feel Halloween to me. I don't know why. But this is what I'm talking about, right? It's, there's so much overlap that you almost could pull everything that I've reviewed. Lovecraft and Poe, yes, of course. Hail the lore, hi. Sorry, I'm wrapping up. It's good to see you, though. The Free Narnian mentions the mad scientist archetype. It holds a light against secular ideals. Yes. Yep, I would agree. Alien, sure. Through Dry Places. I don't think I've read that. Nice. I'm not horror. A vague alien reference. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. And again, support indies. I encourage you guys to try any of the indies that looked interesting to you off the list, or anything on my website. I recommend everything on there. And then after you read something, leave a review. I always champion it as helpful to readers like me. And it really does help other readers and not just the author. And then please comment below. Let me know if there's anything in particular that you need recommendations for in sci-fi and fantasy. I'm happy to talk shop. And any questions or comments, I really appreciate. One of these days I need to go through my and read my comments again. Got some good ones on the last video. So thank you guys so much for coming, and have a great night.